Princess Anne avenging Diana was never going to look like a public attack. It was always going to look quieter than that. A look, a silence, a royal role placed at the exact moment Queen Camilla was reaching the top. The image behind this video is powerful because it places three women in one unresolved royal wound. Diana, the princess, the public never stopped remembering. Camilla, the woman who survived decades of blame. And Anne, the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, who never needed image repair to be respected. The palace wanted Camilla's rise to look settled, official, and dignified. But one detail made that harder. Every step toward the crown forced people back to the same question. Could Camilla ever become queen without reopening what happened to Diana? And if anyone inside the family still carried the old standard, why did so many believe it would be Anne? To understand why Camilla's darkest day felt possible, the wound has to begin where the public first heard it spoken. 1995 became the emotional starting point because Diana's Panorama interview gave the public a sentence it never forgot. Her "three of us" line fixed Camilla inside the collapse of the Wales marriage, and that made every later royal step feel personal to millions. Camilla's future rise was never judged like normal protocol after that. It carried the memory of a marriage breaking in front of the world. 1997 made that wound even harder for the palace to manage. After Diana's death, public grief froze her image as the wronged woman in the royal triangle, and Camilla's name stayed tied to that pain. Every move toward legitimacy had to pass through the same emotional memory. The palace could change titles, but it could not make people forget why those titles felt heavy. Camilla Parker Bowles could not be pushed forward quickly, because the palace knew the resistance was still alive. Her image had to be softened over years through charity work, careful interviews, controlled appearances, and distance from fresh emotional controversy. That slow repair mattered because her acceptance was not only about becoming Charles's wife. It was about asking the public to look at her differently after decades of blame. Princess Anne enters this pressure because she was never part of Camilla's repair campaign. Anne represented old royal duty, restraint, service, and a direct connection to Queen Elizabeth II that did not require public forgiveness. That contrast made her powerful inside the title tension. Camilla had to rebuild trust, while Anne already stood inside the Elizabeth standard many viewers still respected. Avenging Diana works best as symbolic tension, not literal revenge. The stronger pull is that Diana's memory never disappeared, and Anne became the royal figure people believed could still carry that judgment. The palace could present Queen Camilla as settled, but Princess Royal's silence made the old wound feel alive. That is why this conflict begins with memory, not confrontation. Before Anne could become the face of that judgment, Camilla had to finish the long climb back into royal acceptance, and that climb would take years of careful palace control. 2005 became the turning point in Camilla's long return to the royal center. When Charles and Camilla married, the palace gained legal structure, public order, and a clearer future beside the throne. But marriage did not erase the emotional damage attached to her name. Public acceptance was still incomplete because many people still saw her through the pain of Diana's memory. Queen Camilla's image had to be built slowly because she remained connected to one of the monarchy's most painful modern chapters. Every public appearance had to show steadiness, loyalty, and quiet service instead of ambition. The palace could not make her look forced on the country. It had to make Camilla Parker Bowles appear patient, useful, and calm inside the royal family. King Charles needed Camilla's reputation to recover because his own future depended on it. If the woman beside him stayed disputed, his judgment stayed disputed too. The issue was not only romance or marriage. It was about whether Charles's reign could begin without the old scandal following him into Buckingham Palace and weakening the image of royal stability. Media coverage slowly changed over the years, moving away from scandal language toward survival, duty, and resilience. Many viewers began to accept Camilla's work, her charities, and her calmer public role. But that shift was never complete. Under the softer headlines, Princess Diana, the Wales marriage, and the old emotional wound were still waiting whenever Camilla's status rose again. Royal rehabilitation became more fragile the closer Camilla moved toward the crown. Each step upward made the past harder to bury, because the final reward looked so large. Becoming accepted as Charles's wife was one thing. Becoming queen beside Charles was something else. Her rise did not erase the past, it made the old pain more visible. Then Elizabeth gave Camilla the blessing that changed everything. But the exact words she chose left behind a question the palace could not fully control. February 2022 created the first real boundary around Camilla's future. Queen Elizabeth II said it was her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. For Camilla, this was the strongest public approval she had ever received. The late queen had not ignored the past. She had given Camilla protection, but through very careful words. Queen Consort was correct inside royal protocol, but to many viewers, it also sounded controlled. The phrase accepted Camilla beside King Charles, yet it still defined her role instead of letting the public jump straight to Queen Camilla. That difference mattered because the palace was not only managing rank, it was managing memory, emotion, and the old Diana wound. Elizabeth's blessing protected Camilla from future argument, but it also created a standard people could remember. Once the title language was spoken publicly, any later change would be compared against it. The palace may have seen this as calm preparation, but the public wording became a measuring line, and that measuring line made Camilla's status more sensitive than before. Princess Anne mattered because she was not just another royal watching from the side. She was Elizabeth's daughter, raised inside the same rules, discipline, and silence that shaped the old reign. As Princess Royal, she understood when royal language was chosen carefully. So, if that wording was later softened, shortened, or moved past, viewers could believe Anne would notice. Charles's reign had not even begun when the quiet question was already forming. Was Queen Consort only a temporary bridge toward full public acceptance? Or was it Elizabeth's boundary around Camilla's rise? The answer was never explained in plain words. And when Elizabeth died, that careful phrase moved from message to reality inside Buckingham Palace. Camilla had now stepped into the role Elizabeth named. But after the Queen's death, that role would become part of a much bigger power shift. September 2022 changed Camilla's place overnight. After Queen Elizabeth II died, Charles became King Charles, and Camilla became Queen Consort beside him. She was no longer waiting at the edge of acceptance. She had moved into the center of the crown, and the palace hierarchy changed with her. Charles's reign needed the transition to look calm because the monarchy had just lost the figure who had defined it for 70 years. Any argument around Camilla's place could damage the image of smooth succession. The palace needed order, not old wounds. But Camilla's presence still carried the emotional history that made that order harder to believe. Camilla's new status placed her closer to official power than ever before. She was now part of national ceremony, palace visibility, and the public face of the reign. Her role was no longer only personal to Charles. It had become part of daily monarchy, where every appearance helped define the new royal order. Princess Anne became more important in this shift because she represented continuity with Elizabeth's world. While Charles and Camilla stood for the new reign, Anne looked like the surviving face of the old standard. That contrast mattered because viewers trusted Anne as someone shaped by duty, not image repair. Palace unity was necessary, but the deeper question stayed alive. Had Camilla truly been accepted, or had the institution simply moved forward because the new reign required it? That doubt kept the Diana wound close to the surface, and Camilla's repaired image remained vulnerable. Then Harry reopened that wound in public. Just months before the coronation, Camilla's carefully rebuilt image was dragged back into the Diana years. Prince Harry reopened the pressure around Camilla at the worst possible time for the palace. In January 2023, his interviews for Spare pulled Queen Camilla back into public criticism just months before the coronation. The palace wanted calm, ceremony, and acceptance. Instead, Diana-era language returned to the headlines, and Camilla's repaired image looked exposed again. Harry's comments were damaging because he did not speak about Camilla only as a stepmother. He described her as dangerous and connected her rise to media relationships, which revived old questions about who paid the emotional price for her image repair. That made Diana's legacy feel current again. The past was no longer staying in the past. Buckingham Palace did not need another public fight before the coronation ceremony, especially one tied to Diana's sons. Any renewed anger around Camilla risked turning her crowning into a judgment on the old marriage, not only a celebration of Charles's reign. The palace needed royal unity, but Harry's words reminded people that unity can look polished while old pain remains unresolved. Princess Anne was not proven to have new conflict with Camilla because of Harry's remarks, and the script should not pretend that. But his comments changed the emotional weather around Camilla's rise. The public was reminded that not everyone connected to Diana's memory had fully made peace with her position. That made every later sign of family tension easier to believe. Anne's symbolism became stronger because viewers were already asking whether anyone inside the family still carried Diana's unresolved pain. Harry said it loudly from outside the working royal structure. Anne represented the quieter pressure inside it: discipline, old standards, and silence. That contrast made Camilla's coronation feel less like a clean ending and more like a test. As Camilla's coronation moved closer, even the crown she would wear had to be handled with extreme care. One wrong symbol could reopen another storm. Camilla's coronation image had to be protected before the ceremony even began. In February 2023, Buckingham Palace confirmed she would wear Queen Mary's crown instead of using the disputed Koh-i-Noor diamond. On paper, it looked like a crown decision. But inside this moment, it showed how sensitive her rise still was. Camilla was moving toward the highest ceremonial place beside Charles, yet the palace knew even one symbol could pull attention away from her acceptance. The Koh-i-Noor issue was not about Princess Diana, but it proved how easily a royal symbol could become larger than the person wearing it. Camilla's coronation image could not afford another storm attached to her name. The palace wanted the day to feel settled, not dragged into colonial history or fresh public controversy. One line captured the risk. One wrong symbol could take over the whole day. That was the danger around Camilla's crown. Camilla's crown needed to speak in the safest royal language possible. It had to suggest tradition, legitimacy, and calm, not conquest, scandal, or political anger. That mattered because the public was already reading her through emotional history, not only ceremony. If the crown looked controversial, then Camilla's moment could become another argument about what the monarchy chooses to remember and what it tries to move past. Palace planners wanted Camilla's crowning to look dignified, controlled and final. But the careful handling of every visual detail revealed the pressure underneath. A fully confident institution would not need every object around Queen Consort to be so tightly managed. The ceremony had to work on the world stage, but it also had to survive old suspicion at home. That made palace management part of the drama itself. Camilla was approaching the highest female role in the monarchy, yet the palace still had to manage how people would emotionally read her. That contradiction is what made the moment so fragile. She was gaining formal power, but her image still needed protection in front of the global audience. The closer she came to becoming Queen Camilla, the more every symbol around the crown had to be controlled. Then the wording changed, and Camilla's rise moved beyond managed symbols. The palace was no longer only protecting the image, it was preparing the world to accept the title. The coronation invitation turned Camilla's title change into something the public could see before the ceremony even began. In April 2023, the words Queen Camilla appeared in official coronation language, and the shift became impossible to ignore. This was not a private palace adjustment anymore. It was printed, presented, and released ahead of the crowning, giving people time to react before Westminster Abbey made the new status ceremonial. The wording mattered because Queen Elizabeth II had left behind a different public phrase, Queen Consort. That title was correct in royal protocol, but it also sounded softer, more controlled, and more careful. Now, the palace was preparing the country to see Camilla simply as queen beside King Charles. The difference could be explained by tradition, but emotionally it felt much bigger because Elizabeth's words still carried weight. The media reaction quickly focused on the missing word consort, because that word had acted like a quiet boundary around Camilla's rise. Once it disappeared from the official document, her position looked more complete and harder to question. The title no longer felt temporary, conditional, or protected by careful wording. For people still carrying Diana's memory, that made Camilla's status feel like the final step in a long and painful transformation. The change helped Charles's reign look settled because his wife's title could no longer appear uncertain in front of the country. A king with a disputed queen would make the new monarchy look weaker, and the palace clearly needed stability. But for critics, the queen title raised a sharper question. Had Elizabeth's phrasing been honored, or had the palace quietly moved beyond the emotional limit she seemed to leave behind? The strongest fuel for Princess Anne came from this exact wording shift. Anne was Elizabeth's daughter, and viewers believed she would understand when royal language carried more than ceremony. The emotional difference between Queen Consort and Queen Camilla was not just grammar, it was history, rank, and memory. If anyone inside the family was expected to notice the title shift, it was the Princess Royal. Before the coronation could turn that wording into ceremony, Anne gave a rare public warning. And suddenly, the palace mood looked less settled than the invitation tried to suggest. Princess Anne gave the palace a rare public warning before the ceremony even began. In her pre-coronation interview, she questioned the idea of a slimmed-down monarchy and said it doesn't sound like a good idea from where she was standing. The comment was not loud, but it landed heavily because Anne does not usually create headlines by accident. During the coronation period, even a careful sentence from her could feel like pressure. King Charles was trying to present his new reign as modern, smaller, and more controlled. On paper, that version of the modern monarchy sounded clean and efficient. But Anne's answer suggested the plan may have looked easier from the outside than it felt inside the royal family. Her warning hinted at a deeper risk. If too much was cut away, the crown could lose the visible duty that kept it close to people. Queen Camilla was not named in Anne's answer, and the script should not pretend she was. But the comment still mattered, because it showed Anne would not automatically praise every change linked to the new reign. If she could question the wider royal direction, viewers could believe she might also notice shifts in protocol and status. That made her a believable figure in the tension around Camilla's rise. Princess Royal carried a reputation that made the reaction stronger. She was seen as blunt, disciplined, and loyal to the working habits of Queen Elizabeth II. Anne did not need emotional speeches to look firm. Her old standards were already part of her public image, and that made any quiet disagreement feel more serious than a public outburst from someone else. Buckingham Palace still wanted the world to see harmony before the coronation, but Anne's comment made that image feel less complete. At least one senior royal had questioned the direction of Charles's monarchy before the crowns appeared at Westminster Abbey. The official mood was unity, but Anne had already made the new order look fragile. Then the coronation placed Anne directly behind Charles and Camilla, and that image became the strongest visual moment of the whole case. The coronation placed every hidden pressure into one public image. On May 6, 2023, Charles and Camilla were crowned at Westminster Abbey, while Anne served as gold stick in waiting during the royal procession. Her position placed her directly behind the gold state coach, close enough for the public to read meaning into the frame. Camilla was not only being accepted now, she was being crowned in front of the old royal standard Anne seemed to represent. Anne's role was never just decoration. The duty of gold stick is tied to the protection of the monarch, which gave her presence a deeper meaning during Camilla's final rise. She was not standing quietly in a side aisle or hidden in a balcony seat. Princess Anne became a visible guardian of the crown, riding behind the newly crowned couple with the discipline and distance that made the image feel colder than the ceremony itself. The scene carried a heavy contrast the palace could not fully control. Queen Camilla was crowned as the new female center of the monarchy, while King Charles presented the start of his reign beside her. Anne rode behind them with military discipline, giving viewers a clear split between old monarchy and new order. The image did not accuse anyone, but it allowed people to see the family's history sitting in the same frame. Palace planners needed Anne's presence because it gave the ceremony tradition, stability, and continuity after Queen Elizabeth II. Her role helped make the day look orderly, serious, and rooted in royal tradition rather than personal history. But for viewers already sensing tension, the same image felt loaded. It looked as if Elizabeth's standard was watching Camilla's crown closely, even while the palace presented unity to the world. Anne's placement made the avenging Diana frame strongest in symbolic terms. She did not need to confront Camilla on camera, and the script should not claim she did. But her position allowed the audience to imagine Diana's memory standing behind the crown, carried by the one royal many believed still represented old guard judgment. With Princess Royal's silence in the frame, Camilla's coronation looked less like an ending and more like an unresolved question. After that image, the confrontation rumors had everything they needed: a title change, an old wound, a powerful silence, and Anne at the center of the frame. Reports of a direct Anne-Camilla clash remain unconfirmed, and the strongest version of this account has to stay careful. No Buckingham Palace record proves a private confrontation, and no official transcript shows Princess Anne directly challenging Camilla over the title. That does not weaken the mystery. It makes it more believable, because palace tension is rarely written down. Princess Anne becomes important, not because proof exists, but because the public could imagine her noticing what others avoided saying. Verified events already gave the rumor a strong foundation. Diana's memory had never fully disappeared. Elizabeth had used Queen Consort. Harry reopened the old wound in public, and the invitation later used Queen Camilla. Then Anne's warning and the coronation image gave the tension a face. The rumor survived because it did not appear from nowhere. It grew from real moments that made Camilla's rise feel emotionally unfinished. Camilla left the coronation with everything the palace needed the world to see. Queen Camilla had formal rank, ceremonial authority, and public status beside King Charles. But Anne held a different kind of power. The Princess Royal carried credibility, discipline, and old guard respect that no crown could simply replace. Camilla had position. Anne had trust. One line captures the divide. A title can be given, but trust has to be earned. The final conflict was never only between two royal women. It was palace protocol against emotional history, public forgiveness against public memory, and Camilla's crown against Diana's shadow. Many people could accept the ceremony and still feel the past had not been fully answered. That is why public forgiveness stayed complicated. The palace could show unity, but it could not force every viewer to feel closure. Elizabeth's monarchy remains the final question behind the crown. After Elizabeth was gone, who had the right to define her legacy? The new king, the new queen, or the daughter who still carried the old standard? Anne did not need to confirm anything for that question to survive. Camilla stood crowned in public. Diana was remembered in silence, and Anne became the pressure point the palace could not fully close. Camilla's crown was visible, but the question behind it stayed unresolved. Diana's memory remained in the room, and Anne's silence became the part people could not stop reading.